MF Global customers who lost $1.6 billion will hear from bankruptcy trustee Louis Freeh later today at a Senate hearing. Much has been said about all that cash that remains missing from customer accounts. Less discussed, though, the losses suffered by bondholders. It's the topic of Bill Cohan's latest Bloomberg View column. He's a Bloomberg contributing editor and author of Money and Power, How Goldman Sachs Came to Rule the World, among other books. Bill, good to see you again.
Erik, nice to be here.
Bill, you talk about a level of deception perpetrated by MF Global executives, including the former CEO John Corzine, on bondholders, and how these people should be held personally liable. Is that at all possible here? I don't think any individual is going to be held liable.
No, as I think I said, it was a columnist's pipe dream. But, Erik, that is the kind of thing that really needs to happen to prevent this from happening over and over again. I mean, look, how many times have we all said there's been no accountability for anybody in the financial crisis, and MF Global, no accountability? So you have a situation where in July and August of 2010, they issue, investment grade bonds, $650 million of investment grade bonds at par. These are the greatest things ever. Oh, by the way, if John Corzine becomes Treasury Secretary, we have to, boost the rate by an extra 100 basis points.
But doesn't that
and then
make
4 months later, poof, gone.
Doesn't make that a little bit different? How we say, well, you can't go after individuals, but in these specific bond deals, the August 3rd bond deal, there is a key man clause in there. Big investors who are looking at the deal said, I need to know John Corzine is in the company, sitting in the CEO seat. So doesn't that make this different than other Wall Street stories? Because he is the key man here.
Look, legally, Steph, legally, I'm sure they can hide behind the lawyers. They'll hide behind the corporate veil. They'll do that every day until the cows come home. My concern is you're never going to change people's behavior if you keep letting them get away with all of this.
Well, then where are the underwriters in all of this? Jefferies was the lead underwriter in the deal. Is Jefferies going after MF Global, or is Jefferies just as culpable?
Look, again, now you're talking about a second order of responsibility. Chances are the underwriters are, slightly more clueless, shall we say, than the individual management. Yes, the underwriters should also be held accountable, but I don't think in the same way that the executives of MF Global who are pushing these things, knowing they've got a liquidity crisis, and they're acting like everything's fine.
But this is business, Bill. I mean, it's fair game to bring in the underwriters because the underwriters still have some money. Right? The people who ran MF
John
Global,
Corzine has plenty of money.
No, but John Corzine isn't going to be able to make the bondholders whole. Actually, maybe he could.
Well,
right?
maybe he could.
Might have a couple $100 million left.
That's right.
But going back to your point about liability, nobody would go into business. Nobody would work for a public company unless there were limited liability. Nobody's ever going to walk into a situation like that.
They used to. When they were private partnerships, they used to work for maximum liability, ultimate net worth on the line every day. So now we don't do that anymore. And what happens? Nobody gets held accountable because the lawyers just layer, legal, justification upon legal justification upon everything they do. And so we have this huge financial crisis. Billions, trillions of dollars of money has been lost. Trillions has been pumped in. Has anybody been held accountable?
But also, Erik, if Jefferies...
do I hear a pin dropping?
Say what? But if Jefferies...
What I heard yesterday was Franklin Raines talking about the housing market in Washington. This is the guy whose legal bills are still being paid for by the taxpayer after... he was accused of accounting fraud at Fannie Mae.
So you point out a very important point. People not only are not held accountable, then they go on to, brilliant careers following us as if nobody's ever noticed or cares about what they did.
If Jefferies really didn't know, then maybe Jefferies is supposed to be suing MF Global here because Jefferies, surely, it cost them some amount of money to underwrite the deal. Moody's, I am sure Moody's was paid to...
Look, if Jefferies lost money, I'm sure, or if the bondholders, it's unclear because the class action is still coming together for these bondholders, if they're going to go after, just the company, or if they're going to go after the underwriters too. If they go after the underwriters, then if I were a Jefferies, I would go after...
I'd go after Corzine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They're almost certainly thinking about going after the underwriters, even if they don't actually go ahead and do it. They're trying to figure out whether they have a case against the underwriters.
And if you're the rating agency here, you want to do something because clearly your credibility is tarnished that you didn't see what was happening. So they're going to want to do something.
Look, it happened so quickly, right? I mean, to pretend that when they issued these bonds that they didn't know that they were having liquidity problems, that clearly is, the argument that's being made by the hedge funds that bought those bonds and lost Think how quickly they trade for 35 cents on the dollar. They lost 65 cents in value in 3 months. I mean, that's some kind of crazy.
And where were the red flags from May, June, July when this second bond deal was brought August 3rd? Give me a break.
All those unanswered questions about MF Global.
And why aren't they being answered? That is what I really would like to know.
Bill would like to know.
Yes.
Bill, thank you. Our contributing editor here at Bloomberg Television and the Inside Track. Bill Cohan, author of Money and Power, How Goldman Sachs Came to Rule the World. He's all fired up about Jon Corzine.